Hey, Kris, welcome to What's New in Digital.
Hey, Andrew. Good to see you always.
Yes, and you are actually the first ever two-time guest on What's New in Digital. So I'm sure you feel very honored.
I do. I felt very honored. Hopefully, my advice the first time has helped some people out there, and we'll shoot for round two.
I actually did get a response from the newsletter. A
Oh,
woman wrote back to me about the AI copywriting that we talked
oh
about
yeah.
last time. So I
I
never shared that with you, but someone did write back to me about that.
That's awesome. I still love it. I still use it to help brainstorm. I think it's like the best brainstorming tool ever.
Well, we're going to be going in a different direction today. I don't want to go fully into, line iteming everything out, but I think it's going to be an exciting discussion today. And Kris, let's just dive right in. What is point number one you want to walk us through today?
So I have this overarching theme of bite-sized pieces, and you used a term earlier that I loved, that TikTokification of society that's happening. And I think we've all heard how the human attention span has gone down to 8.25 seconds, like shorter attention span than a goldfish. So so what we're seeing that, and especially in the last year, we're seeing that's come through in a lot of different areas in the funnel too, and how people interact with information. So I had three different aspects of that I thought we could talk about.
Yeah. What is number one?
So on the landing pages for people, we're noticing that shift from long form copy to short form copy, and not just having short form copy be more effective, even when you're looking at the layout, so that the pieces are in smaller, easily digestible. Someone can scan it, get the gist of it in a couple seconds. So just a huge move away from blocks of data, blocks of copy. Even when you're telling a story, it needs to be broken up with bullet points and pictures and other ways for the brain to just sort of not feel overwhelmed with all that information.
So landing page are usually used to build rapport and show maybe not rapport, that's probably the wrong word. They're used to show trust and authority with someone in a split second. So how can you still develop that level of trust and rapport with someone if you're not overloading them with content and testimonials and video?
Well, you can still do testimonials, but instead of maybe having like 50 on a page, you can do the scrolling where you've got one and then the next one comes up, or you've got three. But
Oh, so it's a lot about the user experience of the
the
page then with the testimonials?
exactly, for the user experience, but not just that. You want to make sure you're highlighting a shorter chunk of text too, because sometimes what you'd see was like a very long paragraph of text. Now we're looking for a sentence that's highlighting the value of the product or the person or the service, depending on what the item is.
So
And
I want to hear a contrast then. So normally when we're meeting a client for the first time, I won't share the exact range of how long you've been in marketing, but you've been in marketing to your credit for a long time. And you've been through like the dot-com bubble burst and
yeah.
the early onsets of the internet. What was it like back then? Was it long form back then and we just keep on going shorter and shorter?
And it's super cyclical. It's like everything that's new is everything that's old is new again. So we've seen long. I've probably gone through four waves of long form to short form to long form to short form. So we definitely see it cycle. There is something to be said for the fact that the attention span is shorter now.
Mhm.
Also, you can combat that with, like I was saying, on the page itself. Maybe you still keep a relatively long page, but every component of the page is broken up and separated.
Mhm.
So it's more of a psychology behind your page. So it's almost like sub pages, if you will. You've got this is contained. So above the fold is contained and has one color background and one goal. And then that next section has a different color background and also lots of white space, easily digestible. So it's easy to understand where you're supposed to go from there.
Mhm. All right, let's go to number two. What is your second point today?
So I'm thinking about that bite-sized piece as it pertains to lead magnets. And so a couple different ideas in terms of lead magnets. So one, the long webinar, the long podcast, people are now interested, like, how can I get the same gist in smaller pieces? Like everything has a Cliff Notes version, if you will, right now. There's, so if you have, instead of like, oh, here's a great book, it's like, oh, here is a great synopsis of a book. Like, here's the top 10 books you're never going to read, but I'm going to tell you what you need to pull from them. Like, your value is really curating the data, not pointing out where the data is. So webinars as well, that moving from 4-hour webinars or 90-minute webinars or 1-hour webinars down to these like micro learning sessions where in 15-20 minutes you're giving value. Then people, oh, go ahead, you look like
I was just going to make a quick comment that I actually well, the TikTokification was a term I heard from Gary Vaynerchuk, and I was going to say I've actually seen on his podcast that he's been trimming down a lot of them to 20 to 25 minutes. And he's usually very robust historically with like 50-minute plus episodes.
Yeah. I mean, what we've seen across the board on just looking at different clients with their webinars, right? You can see where people start to kind of peter out at that point. And so you want to make sure that it's shorter and you're getting in both the value, and if you're trying to sell, like you want that all. If people are dropping off at 20 minutes and your sales pitch isn't until 55 minutes, your audience hasn't even heard your pitch. So
I want to ask a question on the webinar, and then we'll go to point number 3. So let's say someone, they spent a lot of time and money and resources to create a awesome, compelling, hour-long webinar. They're starting to see their numbers, their show-up rates, the sales, they're starting to dip. Is the only solution now to ditch that old one and create a 20 to 25-minute one? Like, what would you recommend to someone who's starting to see just webinar KPIs start to tank?
Like the fatigue. I'm always a huge fan of test, test, test. I think you hear that all the time from me. So I would say, like, don't just ditch it, test it against something else. But where I would really start with that is in your email follow-up sequence. I would have a couple of the emails that typically have your replay. I would have them have a cheat sheet or a Cliff Notes, something like that, where you can see some of the slides, like, oh, here's the slides and sort of the key points that you missed. And then if you see like that's getting a lot of traction, then invest in making a 20-minute cut of it and go from there. That way you have a little evidence before you spend the money.
Awesome. So let's go to point number 3.
So that's more of if you're selling any sort of educational product itself. If someone goes in to that learning management system, right, and you've got all these videos and all this content, often what we'll see is that people are feeling overwhelmed and they don't start it. And so they don't then go up that ascension ladder because they're not even completing the first. So making sure that there are, again, cheat sheets, Cliff Notes in there as well, or making each episode 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Like, how, instead of thinking, how do we expand this learning to go, oh, look, I've got this program that's 48 hours of learning. You want to be like, hey, look, I can get you 48 hours of education in 2 hours because I am just going to give you the salient points, the important information. You have, if you want to dig deeper, you'll have access to digging deeper, but I can get you where you need to be in a shorter amount of time as a selling point, as opposed to the long.
What's going to be interesting? So I'm doing Lifebook, if you've heard of that.
Yeah, I did that a couple years ago.
Oh, awesome. Did you do the in-person or the virtual course?
The virtual, yeah.
Oh, did you do it through Mindvalley?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I just bought that the other day. So Laura and I are going through that, and I'm now going to be thinking about this. Our first session is tonight.
Okay.
And I know it's 3+ hours a week of video content to consume. And I think they said it's almost 40 hours of video content. So that's a lot. And now I'm hearing from you, like, what could they do to repackage this into a 20-hour course? Or do you think courses like this are going to have to stay at 40 hours, as there's just so much meat to it? And they're actually took it down from what could be like 100 hours.
So having been through that course, I'll tell you too, I watched that course, like I would watch like there's information in there that's not live too. So I would watch it on triple speed because I didn't have the time to do the whole thing.
Right.
So I took an hour of content, watched it on triple speed. So in 20 minutes, I got that same content. There's pieces in there that you need to do, like there's like thinking and processing of the information that they leave you chunks of time to do, and that you need the full time. But one of the things that people do a lot in education is repetition, because repetition helps it stick.
Right.
But if you're losing people through the repetition and they're not continuing on, that's not necessarily an essential tool. So I think that course, for example, they could definitely do shorter ones. And then if you want to see deeper, I would definitely like have a short, quick path, and then like a relaxed path, or you would term these things to get the people down the paths that you want. Does that make sense?
It does. So last question, is there a company, a thought leader, a brand that you think is really excelling at short form content right now that you would recommend someone to check out?
Okay, this is really old, but I thought he was the master at this. I am totally blanking on his name, so give me just 1 minute. There's these books that are business management books, right? And they take that he's written that. So picture a normal book, and then picture that you're using a third of it as margins and 2/3 is your content. So there's all the content, and then on every single page in the 1/3 margin, he actually has like what looks like a little sticky note, and it's giving you the gist of what was said on that page. Like if you're too lazy to read this whole page, or you're too overworked to read this whole page, here's what you really need to take from this. And he did that 20 years ago, and that I'm seeing that format pop up in different things. So I'll try and see if I can find a couple samples in different things. But I actually really like, there's a company, Organized Binder, that we work with, and he just redid his videos to be tons of content in 20 minutes. Awesome. And he did a really phenomenal job. It's in 20 minutes, he covers everything he needs to and is out the door. So that's one from a video perspective that I think is amazing.
Very awesome. Well, Kris, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your 3 points.
Thank you.